yung link ng YouTube niya ako. Pero nakita mo, Han?
Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our first session of the Educational Radio and TV Broadcasting webinar series. For today's discussion, our topic would be on utilizing local and government TV and radio broadcasting in enhancing students' competencies. Before we begin, take note of the following reminders. All registered participants must subscribe to our YouTube channel to access the webinar and get their digital certificates. For the digital certificates, please note that they would be generated at certificate.vibalgroup.com and no certificates will be personally emailed to our participants. During the session, if you have questions, place them on the comment box allotted and they will be addressed by our speaker later on. Place your hashtag LearnAs1PH as our official hashtag to our Vibal webinars. And now to proceed with our discussion this afternoon, it is my pleasure to introduce to you our distinguished speaker. Our speaker for this afternoon is a multi-award winning Filipino master teacher, speaker, and researcher from Pampanga, Philippines. He is a senior high school master teacher at San Matias National High School, School Division Office of Pampanga, Region 3 of the Department of Education in the Philippines, with over 2 decades of teaching experience. Our speaker is a Dangal ng Bayan award-winning educator. The Dangal ng Bayan Award from Philippine government is conferred to an individual for performance of the extraordinary act of public service and consistent demonstration of exemplary ethical behavior on the basis of adherence to the code of conduct and ethical standards for public officials and employees. He is also the recipient of Asian Achiever Award in 2019, Gawad Pat National Award in 2019, Outstanding Research Advocate of the Philippines Award in 2019, and Most Outstanding Teacher Award in 2018. As a research advocate, it has been his advocacy to promote the culture of research by developing school based research management in the region. He has initiated research capacity building for new researchers in the government and private schools. His network with other international organizations became a bridge in hosting international research conferences in Singapore, Bangkok, Philippines, and Vietnam. His love for less fortunate moved him to conduct studies and advocacies for community development in the depressed areas and initiated literary and faith program to select children of Macabebe, Pampanga, Philippines. He holds a bachelor's degree in education, major in religious education, and master's in religious studies in Catechetics cum laude in Don Bosco Center of Studies, Parañaque City, an affiliate of Salesian Pontifical University in Rome, Italy. He took a Master of Arts in Education in De La Salle University, Das Marinas. Presently, he is preparing for his final defense this July 2020 in his degree of Doctor of Philosophy in Educational Management in the University of the Assumption, San Fernando, Pampanga. He also received an honorary doctorate degree, Doctor of Philosophy, in one institution in Brazil. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to present to you our speaker for this afternoon, Dr. Leonilo B. Capulso.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon once again. I am Mr. Leonilo B. Capulso, and this afternoon we're going to discuss utilizing local and government TV and radio broadcasting as a learning modality in enhancing students' competencies. But before we proceed, please know that I am not a broadcaster or a TV broadcaster. I am a teacher and a researcher. So based on this, all our discussions will be drawn from all the research conducted on the effectiveness and the challenges encountered in using broadcasting, TV, and radio broadcasting in enhancing students' performance. I would like to thank Ma'am Kia for inviting me here, for particularly Vival Publication for uh, inviting me to be part of this webinar. And to all of you who are watching, please journey with me as we try to discuss the understanding TV and broadcasting as a learning modality. For our objective this afternoon, we're going to discuss basic concepts on TV and radio broadcasting in the perspective of educational paradigm. We're going also to explain the context of TV and radio broadcasting based on different research studies conducted inside and outside the country. And eventually, we will appreciate the importance of using TV and radio broadcasting as an alternative learning modality despite its limitations. And at the end, we're going to draw out insights in order for us to enhance educational mechanism to contribute to quality educational standards. In few seconds, I'll be presenting to you different pictures that show the new normal in our society as teachers, as parents, as educators. Most of us maybe is very much familiar with this scenario where people are hearing mass in front of their television sets. Even our Congress and Senate are doing their sessions online via Zoom and other mechanism following social distancing. Our community had been very much vigilant in trying to promote a mechanism for an enhanced community quarantine. But if you try to look at all of this, what the common denominator was because of this phenomenon of coronavirus 2019 outbreak. Since June 21, 2020, and that's the data yesterday, we have 30,000 confirmed cases with 1,169 death cases with 7,893 recoveries. But if you try to see just few days back, we have 26,420. For a matter of 6 days, we actually escalated to more than 5,000 cases. That's how COVID-19 is affecting all of us. And of course, it doesn't spare our educational system, particularly and the Department of Education. That is why this afternoon we're going to discuss the initiative of Department of Education, other agencies in trying to maintain quality education despite the midst of pandemic. As early as April 17, 2020 in Manila Bulletin, the Department of Education announced that it's preparing for the new normal in education amid the COVID-19. Mr. George Ching in the Philippine Daily Inquirer in April 28 was actually mentioning that the Department of Education is expecting 27 million students to enroll this school year based on the enrollment list of the previous year. But since yesterday or June 20, the Department of Education announced that we have already 13 million students enrolled in our schools through online and other mechanism instituted and observed by different divisions and regional offices. USEC Alin Pasqua actually announced that the opening of the school year in the public school is on August 24, 2020. But how would be the mechanism of the new school year if we are going to open in August 24. The Department of Education, with all other experts and stakeholders, developed this what we call learning continuity plan that would be responding to provide relevant, accessible, and quality education. Learning continuity plan is the major response of the department and its commitment in ensuring health, safety, and well-being of learners, teachers, personnel in time of COVID-19 while trying to find ways for education to continue amidst the crisis for the upcoming school year that will start in August 24. This learning continuity plan has different pillars, which was actually under the policy guidelines of school governance and management. But for this afternoon, let's just focus on one pillar or one of the many pillars of learning continuity plan, which is the teaching learning modalities. The Department of Education introduced the four modalities that will be observed as we open the school year. The first modality is the face-to-face modality followed by a blended learning. These two modalities will only be adopted in areas where there is no cases or there is no enhanced community quarantine or general community quarantine. Whereas distance learning and homeschooling will be adopted on areas under ECQ and GCQ. On the face-to-face modality, this will be subject to physical distancing and minimum health standards. Of course, if this will push through, minimal class size will also be observed. Face-to-face learning, it is a combination of a face-to-face learning delivery and an online distance learning, modular distance learning, and TV and radio-based instruction. The last part I will be giving emphasis. Blended learning could be a combination of face-to-face and modular distance learning. This is to areas without internet connection. Face-to-face and online distance learning to those who have a strong internet and Wi-Fi connection. Face-to-face and TV radio-based instruction. This is particularly on areas without internet or very low connectivity, and face-to-face modular online and TV radio broadcasting. That means it is a compendium of all those modalities. Distance learning, however, will be adopted in areas under ECQ and GCQ. This take place between the teacher and the learner who are geographically remote from each other during the instruction. And later on, you would realize this is one of the possible modality where TV and radio broadcasting will be used. Modular distance learning, online distance learning, or TV radio-based instructions where the modalities under distance learning. Homeschooling, however, will be facilitated by qualified parents, guardians, or tutors who have undergone relevant trainings and subject to regulations. Policy on this homeschooling is now under review. All these were based from this poster or infographics released by the Department of Education that summarize the four modalities as part of the learning delivery modalities or part of the learning continuity plan for school year 2020-2021. And last June 16, 2020, the President keeps Metro Manila under general quarantine. Okay? Um, Community quarantine. Cebu City, however, was reverted to enhanced community quarantine. And because of this declaration, this will also help the local government officials in trying to determine which kind of modality they will be adopting as the school opens by August 24. The Secretary of Education in May 28, 2020 said that the Department of Education will be tapping TV and radio for education amidst the pandemic. What does she really mean by that? So the Department of Education will implement alternative ways of learning such as lessons given to televisions and radio amidst the coronavirus. According to the Secretary, these are the long-time approaches that had been adopted already by different countries. Aside from using the DepEd Commons, being used by 7 million subscribers so far. According to her, television can be used with homes without internet. Radio-based instruction, however, is considered as the best used since 1800s, while TV was used in the early 20, 1950s and 1960s. According to the same report, the Secretary of the Department of Education said that 15% of free television time should be programs to be allotted for children as stipulated by law. That's why they said there are existing educational program already in television. All we have to do is to transmit to these television networks our curriculum. And they are now working on that mechanism. Also, the flagship state broadcaster, the Philippine Television Network, volunteered to be used by the Department of Education. The state-owned Continental Broadcasting Corporation, or IBC-13, also offered its radio stations to be used exclusively for the Department of Education. Secretary Martin Andanar, the Presidential Commission Operations Office Secretary, said that DepEd can use the IBC-13 as an educational platform. And what he's trying to say, that the entire frequency can be dedicated solely for the Department of Education. In April 17, 2020, DepEd should partner with broadcast media to air educational programs was actually suggested by Secretary or by Senator Gatchalian. Senator Sherwin Gatchalian is now the present chairman of Senate Committee on Education. According to him, DepEd should tie up with the broadcast media so that educational programs may be aired while the enhanced community quarantine is in place over Luzon and other parts of the country based on the proclamation of the president. According to her, in far-flung areas, however, has the minimal capacity of accessing internet mechanism. That's why he said may be rich that TV and radio platforms will be maximized. Aside from our online mechanism, which is the DepEd Commons. He also cited Argentina government so initiated to air 14 hours on radio to reach learners amidst the coronavirus crisis. He also added that DepEd should also coordinate with the Cultural Center of the Philippines, the Department of Science and Technology, state colleges and universities in order to gather existing materials on record that can be aired on state-run People's Television Network. But before we proceed, let's try to clarify certain things. Let's try to be aware of some terminologies that we might have been hearing, but some points need to be clarified, particularly on the basic concepts on radio and TV broadcasting. So what really are we referring to radio and television broadcasting? According to this study, to this definition, television broadcasting includes the production and transmission of educational, entertaining, and news-related programming as practical application of audio and video technologies. Broadcasting, however, is both large and diverse field. There are several types of TV broadcasting that I will not elaborate, but very few lines I'll trying to discuss to give us at least a better idea of understanding TV and radio broadcasting. So there is what we call analog terrestrial TV, systems for sound transmission, digital satellite TV, cable TV, and there are other new technologies such as digital terrestrial TV, high definition television, pay-per-view, so on and so forth. So when we speak of terrestrial television, it is a term which refers to modes of television broadcasting, which do not involve satellite transmission or via underground cables, as you see in the picture. Satellite television, however, pertains to television signals delivered by means of communication satellites and received by satellite dishes and set-top boxes. In many areas of the world, it provides a wide range of channels and services to often to areas that are serviced by terrestrial or cable providers. Cable TV is a system of distribution of audiovisual content for television, FM radio, and other services to consumers through fixed coaxial cables, avoiding the traditional system of radio broadcasting antennas, and have widespread use mainly through the pay TV services. How about radio broadcasting? Radio broadcasting pertains to transmission of audio, sometimes with related metadata, by radio waves intended to reach a wide audience. Stations can be affiliated to radio network broadcasting, a common radio format, either in broadcast syndication or a simulcast or both. Its signals can be either an analog audio or digital audio. Television broadcasting sometimes or also uses radio frequencies but includes, however, video signals. So after knowing those basic terminologies, let's now try to examine what studies have found out on the effectiveness, challenges, and coping mechanism on using television and radio broadcasting to enhance students' competencies, particularly in the midst of pandemic. Radio technology offers a unique way for K-12 teachers to integrate technology into the K-12 curriculum. How can we use radio in teaching and learning, particularly in distance learning? In this research, it says that English and language art teachers will be able to use radio in order to reinforce listening, writing, and speaking skills. Also, with a shortwave radio, foreign language teachers, especially those who are teaching to international schools in the country, can provide valuable students with an opportunity to learn language demonstrated by native speakers. As we know, our English has different kinds of modalities and different kinds of brand. Moreover, elementary teachers can help students learn basic electricity and regional geography in entertaining ways using AM radios. According to this article of Antonino on radio in the classroom curriculum integration and communication skills in one of these research journal. He said that social studies teacher will appreciate shortwave radios as a tool for teaching US and global topics. This is how it is done in the United States. What else? Science, physics, and earth science teachers can use radios to demonstrate the properties of electricity, wave energy, weather, and the Earth's atmosphere. English language and arts teachers will be able to use radio to reinforce listening, writing, and speaking skills, as I have mentioned earlier. Okay. In other countries, however, radio is used differently according to its use. In Thailand, for example, radio broadcasting is used by teacher to teach mathematics to school children. In India, they use radio as a tool for discussing topics on rural development. In Mali, they use radio to discuss literacy training. In Nigeria, radio is used for management courses relating to agriculture. While in Sri Lanka, they use radio to discuss topics on family planning. However, radio or radio broadcasting has its own controversy. It has its own challenges. According to the study conducted by Dr. Fatard Saba, he is a founder of distanceeducation.com. Listening to radio can sometimes develop intellectual passivity. Why? Because most often than not, it is a one-way communication where students are only listening to what the announcer or the broadcaster is delivering over the radio, unless a teacher has to do something. As I mentioned, radio is a one-way means of communication because unlike other countries where students have their own way of reciprocating the information given by teachers over the radio, it will only become a one-way means of communication. This is also hard to achieve if we use television broadcasting because if we have a face-to-face learning delivery, we could actually identify the learning competencies and preference of our students. Whereas our radio has to cater to the general needs of the students. Listening to radio is less effective than face-to-face communication, according to the study of Mr. Saba, due to the lack of speakers' facial expression and gestures. Good for us now, through the help of internet, we could now see that radio broadcaster in front of our screens. That is if we have internet access. Broadcast times are also hard to adjust to class schedules because you have to determine what grade level are supposed to listen at this particular time. Programs are produced by radio artists and financiers and not by educators. So it needs a lot of adjustment when it comes to the one delivering the program, delivering the content, because it needs a lot of educational philosophy and paradigms for them to totally capture the capacity of students. Of course, they are good in broadcasting because that's their field, but it takes a lot of collaboration and maybe an interchange of ideas on how to deliver the content to according to the needs of the students. And based on this study, in this particular study, programs are not based on the school curriculum. That is why, according to the Secretary of the Department of Education, if DepEd has to adapt radio and TV broadcasting content of our curriculum, which is now identified through our MELC, will be the basis of content delivery in radio broadcasting. In the study conducted by Jordan Catapano in the article in teachhub.com, he said that children spend about 28 hours per week, this time, 4 hours per day watching television. This is a study conducted in the University of Michigan Health System in 2010. Now we are looking at the television broadcasting. What is the role of television in education? TV has been given considerable importance in many countries, as mentioned, as a source and tool for teaching. TV is adaptable and can follow different approaches when used in different educational situations. That is why other authors, other educators would rather go for using television broadcasting than radio broadcasting because it is varied mechanism. The medium is used for formal, non-formal, and informal education. Functions of television broadcasting is supportive and reinforceful or reinforcement tool for the topics discussed by the teacher in other platforms. According to the study conducted by Guhil in Maharaja University. What kind of objectives now can be achieved if we use television broadcasting in the perspective of a teacher, of um, moderator of learner? So these are the objectives that we could derive, we could achieve if we use television broadcasting in teaching. Using TV broadcasting will assure a social quality in education because it also develops our social collaboration with those people within which we are trying to collaborate as we try to discuss certain topics. In other countries, these mechanisms were actually coupled with um, uh, a a module sent to the students for the students to answer at home. And it is in that module which was identified what are the things to be discussed in radio or television broadcasting, so that there is still an interaction between students and teacher. It enhances quality in education because one of its purpose is to enhance the discussion conducted in other online platforms. Television broadcasting will reduce dependency on the verbal teaching that we used to do face to face and eventually free teachers from that burden, although the content would still be dependent on the teacher who is actually in charge of the subject. TV broadcasting provides flexibility of time and space in learning. And of course, television broadcasting stimulates learning. This is based on the principle of pragmatism of John Dewey. TV also provides mass education opportunity because it caters to a bigger audience who are attuned to the television channel which was actually assigned to deliver the particular content. Now, let's try to consider the benefit of educational television according to an article in jumpstart.com. One, according to this article, using television broadcasting can help a child's intellect. Researchers have observed how educational programs can aid in boosting children's intellect. A study was conducted to children ages 2 to 7 who watched a few hours of educational television programs per day, who performed much better on academic tests than those who did not watch TV. We are talking here about educational television programs. Children who spent most of their television time watching shows like cartoons scored lower than those who viewed educational ones. This is what I was telling you. We're not only talking of purely TV programs, but educational programs. If students are guided properly by parents on trying to maximize TV programs, then study shows that indeed, educational TV programs can enhance students' intellect. Therefore, it is important to monitor what your children are watching and shows them educational programs as opposed to simply letting them watch cartoons. And sometimes as parents, we are guilty of this because of our own schedules. We just allow our children to consume television programs that sometimes we didn't realize they are abusing it or they are actually consuming some non-educational programs. TV can also be a teacher for children. Television is a great way to open your child's mind to a variety of things that help them learn about topics they may not be exposed to at school. On the other hand, television can reinforce what children learn in school and provide a supplementary method to teaching children about important subjects. As mentioned by our Secretary of the Department of Education, there are already some educational program in the local televisions which are actually in place. And if you realize this local educational television programs had been exposing our children to develop some Filipino values and even basic arithmetic and literacy development. TV can also show children things they won't see otherwise. So without television, most children would never be able to see amazing things like exotic animals, different cultures, and beautiful cities. Now, there are television who would even allow us to do virtual tour. So we were able to reach these places and its intricacies without leaving the comforts of our home. For example, nature shows history programs are great resources for teaching children about creatures and places that they never heard of. Kids can learn this type of media in order to appreciate and understand the world around them, which according to other studies, very important in the formative years of children. Television can also provide good role models for our children. Of course, not everyone that we see in TV are good role models. But when children watch television, they are bound to be influenced by characters they see. So allowing your children to watch shows with characters who promote positive messages like healthy living and helping others will influence them to make good choices. So every Saturdays and Sundays we have actually evening shows that promotes Filipino values in different local channels. So as parents, as educators, it is our role to guide our learners in order to mold, in order to capture positive values and imitate people they see in front of the screen. Unfortunately, televisions have also its limitations. According to the study conducted by Vasa Sin, which entitled What are the Advantages and Limitations of Educational Television? It says, one of the limitation of educational television is it has no further action. So students or learners just watch. And it's possible, okay, no further action is possible other than viewing and listening. So it becomes passive mechanism. So what is now a suggestion? A suggestion is for the teacher or parents to organize a kind of group discussion between instructors and learners after the program. So that is why to those without internet, we can use text messages as our mechanism. For those who have internets or data, we could actually use, for example, Messenger, creating them a group chat where they could actually discuss certain topics no, presented in television program. Another limitation is some students who are watching television engage themselves in daydreaming during the program. Therefore, it is suggested to caution the students in advance that a follow-up discussion will be held after the program. So teachers should prepare beforehand if the program or a particular topic is to be presented in this particular time slot. There must be actually guide questions for students to answer before the content is delivered so that students are actually glued in front of their screen and they are actually trying to gradually conceptualize the answers that need to be or the things that need to be answered. However, another limitation of television is the absence of learners' participation, as I mentioned earlier, because it becomes a one-way communication during the program. Okay. Furthermore, the program or the television program cannot be adapted to individual learners. So, unlike in face-to-face, we could actually differentiate or separate our students according to their learning preference that would actually challenge the teachers to develop different teaching modalities inside the classroom. But in television, there is no way of doing that. So it can only be adapted to particular group if their needs are identified and defined earlier. So if I am a teacher of this particular group and I already identified the aptitude of my students, so even the assignments or the guide question I have provided should depend on their aptitude, on their preference. For example, this group of students who are actually artistic, after watching this television program, they can be able to create a poem, a short story, a reflection, an artwork. But for those people who are good in logical thinking, they might be asked or challenged some higher order thinking skills guide questions. Another limitation of television is there is the dissimilarity in the intellectual background of the learners. So there are not so fast learner and very fast learners. And the TV program does not cater to that because it catered to the general learners watching the television program. So the suggestion is to overcome, this can be overcome by instructors by giving additional background information before the program is enabling everybody to follow it. For example, if this Saturday, the program is about a story of a particular national hero of the Philippines, I could actually give them the background, how this personality or identity came out. what is the political or even religious background that made this person a saint or made this person a hero. And eventually the question would be, as a student of the 21st century, what are practical ways you can do to imitate this man, to imitate this saint? So it will be easier for the student to capture and even imbibe the story being projected or related in the television program. The lessons or meanings are flexible and sometimes convenient because TV programs have, particularly those private networks, have their own time slots. But good for us in the Department of Education that our local television network and even our radio stations, local radio station or state-run radio stations have actually they are willing to allow the Department of Education to use its platform, then we could at least in any way control certain period of time and trying to arrange which subject should be delivered at this particular time slot, what grade level should be next, what will be the next. Okay? The class teacher has no control over the pace of development of a TV lesson because, for example, in the K-12 curriculum, we have kinder to grade 12 with their varied lessons. So it's actually a challenge to the Department of Education, to the curriculum developers, to the teachers in trying to, to divide the particular subject, the particular type. Although we should realize that this is not the only modality being adopted by the Department of Education. There might be challenges. As mentioned earlier, there are already online platforms to those who are living in areas with very strong connectivity. For those who are far-flung areas, they are actually provided with some printed materials that had been drafted by teachers during this period from summer to before the start of the school year. Some of them were actually put into online platforms. So TV broadcasting and radio broadcasting will only be an alternative to those areas of the country with a lower or low connectivity or even without internet access. It is difficult to take account of variations in attainment and ability within the age group. That's exactly what I'm saying before. Unlike in the class, we could actually identify which grade level suits to this particular subject, what kind of discussion, of modality I'll be adapting as a teacher, what kind of questions I'll be throwing to my students. Unfortunately, this is one of the limitation of using educational television. Interruption and distraction at the receiving end can seriously impair the effectiveness of a lesson. Sometimes we cannot control that. And we know that any form of noise and distraction can impede the mental processes of a student. The effectiveness of any transmitted aid is limited to the range of the transmitter. This is a very technical issue. Teachers may consider television's all-absorbing quality in some way restrictive. Why restrictive? Because pupils' participation is discouraged although not prevented entirely because of its limited mechanism. Now, what kind of content can be incorporated in the television program? According to this study, or according to the study done in other countries, the following can be incorporated in the television programs, educational program, like teaching demonstrations, this which have actually been recorded, recordings of students' performance. So this what they have done so far. So for example, in junior and senior high school and even in grade school, teachers are actually observed by their supervisors and their actually school leaders in delivering a particular lesson where teacher actually very much prepared. So the this recorded teaching demonstration of a particular topic with a particular value can be part of the content of the television program. recordings of students' performance in school during extracurricular activities, recordings of teachers' performances, micro teaching and teachers' performance. So these are but only part of possible content aside from the normal lessons that will be delivered in the television and radio broadcasting. Image magnification for demonstration, records of field trips where students try to find adventure in places they went to, and eventually discover some new knowledge in places, and maybe significant areas that the field trip actually opened them to. Career counseling programs. This is also particularly for those who are transitioning from junior to senior high school. No, based on some tracer study, it was found out that there were almost half or more than half of those who graduated from senior high school took different course strand in college. So now the different schools are trying to assess why there was that discontinuity, why between the track or the strand that the senior high school student took in his senior high school in going to or in taking college courses. So television and even radio broadcasting can be used to enhance the counseling program of schools. And of course, critical community problems. So um, televisions and radio broadcasting can also be utilized to discuss some critical issues, political issues, religious issues that would enhance the holistic development of learners. Before I end, as educators of the 21st century in the midst of the pandemic, how are we supposed to respond to these challenges, especially on using radio broadcasting and television broadcasting? According to Mr. Jelix Mercader, in one of his sharing, he said, educators like us who will be delivering lessons online or later on face-to-face should adapt or should embrace the three A's. One is to adapt to the situation. Now we are in the new normal. That is why thank you to Vival Publication for providing teachers this opportunity to enhance themselves, to capacitate themselves, to be able to embrace. And that brings us to the second A, to adapt to the new ways of addressing teaching and learning. That is why it is true that there are some parents who cannot afford to buy gadgets for their children for the online mechanism. That is why the Department of Education is saying, no, you are not required, because there are other mechanisms that the department will be using, like printed modules and later on television and radio broadcasting, to be able to deliver quality education as part of the learning continuity plan of the department. So we need not to be afraid. And of course, we need to be adept. And this is what we're doing. We're trying to continue to learn and relearn so that we will not also be left behind by our students. So we need to be adept with skills that are required as we face this challenge of COVID-19. In closing, this new normal is not just about operating in an environment that secure health of students and transitioning to online modalities or using radio and TV broadcasting. New normal, according to Mr. George Ching, is to use technology like radio, like TV, like internet in areas with capacity to do so, while trying to empower our learners, our communities, our other stakeholders to create positive learning environments in which the students can grow, as stipulated in DepEd vision and mission. In new normal, it should not also sacrifice the quality of education, but continue to provide equal opportunities, may it be online or offline, most especially to the marginalized and vulnerable sectors. So, online mechanism should not be a way to widen the digital divide. That is why the department and even the school division offices and regional offices are trying to develop and adapt their own contextualized learning continuity plan to respond to the different needs of students. And we should know that whatever modality we adopt is not a one-size-fits-all solution, but one that is dependent on the needs of its learning community. So I hope that this sharing would help us develop our own insights, and as educators, we are challenged to also discover other new ways to enhance the educational standard of our country and eventually contribute to making our country one of the best country in the world, particularly when it comes to educational standards. So me, all these webinars that we've been attending will help us capacitate ourselves and eventually develop and discover new ways of doing things. As long as we know our limitations, as one of the great philosophers said, in the name of Aristotle, and I quote, he said, everything when too much is bad. So we have to do things in moderation. We should not compromise other equally important things, but we should strike the balance in becoming an educator, a facilitator of learning, and at the same time, doing our role as responsible citizens. And with that, thank you very much for listening. And I hope in my own little way, I was able to share some insights about using radio and television newscasting or broadcasting as an alternative learning modality. If you have some other questions, my number is posted on the screen. My email address is also there. So you could continue to approach me, and through my own Beyond Books publication, we continue to help teachers, capacitate teachers like Vival Group of companies to help each other to become responsible citizens, responsible educators of our country. So thank you very much for listening. Vival, thank you once again for inviting me in. Ma'am Kia.
Hi sir, good afternoon po.
Hi, ma'am. Good
Ayun po,
afternoon.
sir, we have few questions here from our participants. Let me
Okay.
read lang din po, sir. So
Okay,
this
ma'am.
is from Miss Evelyn Nada. I find
Okay.
it very interesting to venture on learning through television, but my concern here is, isn't it very expensive?
Okay. Um, Ma'am, the television or radio broadcasting as an alternative delivery, according to the Department of Education, is now being studied. Now, in the case that this will push through, I think, as mentioned in the earlier part of our discussion, the Department of Education will be the one to supply the content to the television network, which are actually owned by the government. So when it comes to expenses, I think that is actually a valid concern. But now the the Department of Education, the central office, and later on our SDOs and regional offices will help us to figure out this kind of mechanism on trying to provide quality education to our students. So that's taken noted, ma'am. Ma'am Kia.
Okay po, sir. Next question po natin. This is from Miss Georgette Paradanas. Sir, the question po is, for us private schools, how will it be possible for us to create our TV and radio entries?
Okay. Um, we all know, thank you ma'am for that question, that as much as the private sectors or private schools are given a little bit of freedom when it comes to the subjects they are teaching. But since we are sharing the at least uh, the basic content through the milk of the Department of Education, I think those contents will be provided by the Department of Education. The private schools, however, I believe will be given opportunity to share other other contents, as just like the previous discussion that the undersecretary was sharing with other private organization, that DepEd is actually very much open and willing to accept suggestions and even willing to accept contents from different stakeholders. So I think once these things are in place, private schools can also suggest other contents to the Department of Education to be incorporated as part of the content to be presented in the state-run programs.
Okay
Thank you,
po.
Ma'am T.
Okay po. Sir, next question. This is from Miss Jocelyn David. Do we actually have TV programs being developed that are aligned with milk? It's just that we are already telling parents that they can use this modality, but is it already available?
At the moment, I cannot frankly tell you how far the Department of Education is when it comes to preparation of the content to be used as part of the modality. But based on the statement of the secretary, all these things are already being considered. As we know, some contents were actually the content that we actually had since summer were the ones we used, like modules to that were actually incorporated in DepEd Commons. I think the same kind of platforms or the same kind of content will be the ones to be fed to the state-run television network and other maybe network who are willing to cater to this kind of modality. But I personally am not sure yet to what extent or the degree of the preparation or level of preparation the Department of Education has in place when it comes to the content to be used by radio stations and TV stations for this kind of modality. But as mentioned, this is also taken into considerations, especially on areas without Wi-Fi connections. Ma'am
Okay
Kia.
po, sir. Then for our last question for this afternoon, this is from Miss Jana Del Rosario. Sir, the question po is, do you have a suggested format or outline for the sessions to be conducted via TV or via radio?
Okay. Thank you, ma'am, for that question. As per the program, if you were listening earlier to our discussion, I think one of the limitation of using television broadcasting and TV broadcasting is that the challenge is how to cater all those subjects with that particular limited period of time. So that's one of the limitation. Unlike the face-to-face modality where teachers could actually develop different learning modalities to different needs of students. As of the moment, I'm waiting for the pronouncement also of the Department of Education on the outline to be used in case TV and radio broadcasting will be adopted by the local radio for this kind of modality. But the Department of Education earlier said that this again is taken noted aside from the printed media or printed manuals or brochures to be used by students without Wi-Fi connections.
Okay po, sir. So that's all the questions that we have. For the other questions not addressed during this session, we'll try to reach out to you po through our YouTube comments. Doc, do you have any before we end the session for this afternoon, do you have any final reminders to our viewers today?
Okay. Once again, thank you for staying with me. Thank you for journeying with me. Just like you, I am also a master teacher in a Department of Education, and it has been our advocacy to develop our learners through different ways available. Using television and radio broadcasting is only one of the possible ways that we can use. But we have to realize that since we are first completing other modalities, we are trying to to fix other online modalities, other online mechanism, as we also try to develop modalities for or alternative modalities for TV and radio broadcasting. I think the best thing that we could do as is to help our schools, to help our division in trying to find ways to respond to these needs. And I'm glad that Vival Publication has been very generous in sharing their advocacies, their mechanism to continue to help teachers to become productive and efficient in trying to contribute to making our student responsible citizens. So we hope that when the pandemic is gone, we go back to our new normal, and together we will try to develop other possible modalities to improve the quality education that we have. So once again, Ma'am Kia, thank you for inviting me here. Vival Publication, thank you for inviting me here. And to the rest who've been with me, let's continue to make a difference one life at a time. Good afternoon.
Okay, there we have it. Thank you very much, Doc Capulso, for this very enlightening and fruitful session this afternoon. It is an honor for Vibal Group Incorporated to have you with us. And of course, to all our Kavibal viewers, thanks for your continuous patronage to our daily learning session. Muli, maraming salamat at magandang araw sa ating lahat.